How could silence be so heavy? Ananda sat on the small balcony of his rented apartment, the Chiang Mai air thick with the late morning heat. Below, the narrow soi hummed with a life that felt utterly separate from his own. A motorbike sputtered past, its rider balancing improbable bags of groceries. The scent of frying garlic and chili drifted up from a nearby food stall, a smell that should have been comforting, familiar, but instead only sharpened the edges of his solitude. 6 months. 6 months since he'd traded the ghost-filled rooms of his Bangkok home for this quiet corner of the north, urged gently by his daughter Pim. 6 months, and the silence left by Suni's absence hadn't softened. It had solidified, pressing in on him like the humid air. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses, his gaze unfocused on the tangled wires crisscrossing between buildings. He'd been a librarian for 40 years, a curator of stories, yet his own narrative felt abruptly truncated, the final chapters unwritten, irrelevant. What was the point of turning the page when the main character had vanished? He picked up a book lying beside his chair, a history of the Lanna Kingdom, but the words swam meaninglessly. His fingers traced the worn spine, a familiar gesture seeking an anchor in a sea of disorientation. Sune would have known what to do. She would have filled this silence with purpose, with plans, with the easy chatter that had been the background music of his life. He sighed, the sound swallowed instantly by the soi's low thrum. Endurance. That was the goal now. Endure the days without becoming a burden. He closed his eyes against the glare, the weight of the unspoken, unshared grief settling deeper in his chest. Wake early, make instant coffee, sit on the balcony until the heat became too much. Read or pretend to read. Eat something simple, often just rice and a preserved egg bought from the convenience store down the road. Another attempt at reading. Perhaps a nap, though sleep offered little respite, often bringing fragmented dreams of Suni, vivid and cruelly brief. In the evenings, the television flickered, unwatched, a sentinel against the encroaching quiet. Then came the phone call with Pim. Tonight, like most nights, it followed a familiar pattern. "How are you, Pa?" Pim's voice, bright but tinged with a worry she tried to conceal. "I'm fine, dear, just relaxing." His standard reply, smooth from repetition. "Are you eating properly? Did you go for a walk today?" Yes, don't worry about me." He deflected her gentle prodding, picturing her juggling her phone, her 2 young children likely clamoring for attention in the background. He felt a pang of guilt for her worry, coupled with an irrational resentment that she couldn't understand the vast emptiness Suni had left. How could she? She had her own full life, her husband, her demanding job. He was just an old man rattling around in an apartment that wasn't quite home. "The children miss you, Pa. We should have dinner soon." That would be nice, he agreed, knowing he would likely find an excuse when the time came. The thought of navigating the cheerful chaos of her household felt exhausting. After hanging up, the silence rushed back in, louder than before. He walked over to the small shrine he'd set up in a corner, Suni's smiling photograph nestled amongst a few wilting jasmine buds. He lit a stick of incense, the fragrant smoke curling upwards, a fragile prayer into the indifferent air. He missed her practicality, her laughter, even her occasional nagging. He missed the easy companionship, the shared history held in knowing glances. Now, there was only this echoing space, filled with memories he couldn't bear and a future he couldn't envision. The incident happened on one of his rare excursions beyond the immediate vicinity of his soi. He'd decided on a whim, fueled more by restlessness than resolve, to walk towards the Jed Yod area, remembering Suni had once mentioned the unique architecture of the temple there, Wat Chet Yot. The sun beat down fiercely, even through the canopy of trees lining the road. He felt sluggish, the humid air clinging to him like damp cloth. He paused near a bustling intersection, waiting for the traffic light. Suddenly, the world tilted. The roar of engines seemed to fade, replaced by a rushing sound in his ears. The pavement seemed to ripple, and a wave of dizziness washed over him, so intense he had to grip a nearby signpost to steady himself. His heart hammered against his ribs. Black spots danced before his eyes. He squeezed them shut, breathing deeply, trying to anchor himself. The moment passed as quickly as it came, leaving him shaken, a cold sweat prickling his skin despite the heat. He stood there for a long minute, leaning against the post, the traffic flowing around him unnoticed. It wasn't just grief anymore. It was fragility. His own body, the vessel carrying him through this unwanted solitude, was reminding him of its limits. He abandoned the walk to the temple, turning back towards his apartment with slow, deliberate steps, the earlier lethargy replaced by a chilling awareness. He couldn't simply endure. Endurance required strength, and his strength felt precarious. That evening, he didn't deflect Pym's questions. When she asked how he was, he hesitated, then admitted, "I felt a bit dizzy today on my walk." The concern in her voice was immediate, sharp. She insisted he see a doctor, making the appointment for him before he could protest further. The visit to the clinic near Chiang Mai Ram Hospital was efficient, impersonal. The doctor, a kind-faced woman perhaps Pym's age, listened patiently, checked his blood pressure, asked questions about his diet, his activity levels, his stress. Her verdict was gentle but firm. "Your blood pressure is a little high, Kunananda. Nothing alarming yet, but we need to manage it. Grief takes a physical toll. You need regular, gentle exercise, better nutrition, and finding ways to manage stress is crucial." She handed him a pamphlet on healthy eating and suggested starting with short daily walks. "Your body needs care, especially now," she added softly. Walking out into the bright sunlight, the doctor's words echoed. Manage stress, gentle exercise, better nutrition. It sounded simple yet felt monumental. It required an active engagement with life, the very thing he'd been avoiding. But the memory of that sudden, terrifying dizziness was a potent motivator. He couldn't afford to drift further. He had to take the helm, however reluctantly. The first walks were hesitant affairs. He chose the quietest time, early morning before the soi fully woke, feeling conspicuous in his neat shirt and trousers, like an actor uncertain of his role. He walked slowly around the block, his gaze fixed on the pavement, acutely aware of every passing motorbike, every curious glance from a neighbour sweeping their doorstep. He felt clumsy, out of rhythm with the city's pulse. He returned to his apartment breathless, not from exertion, but from the effort of simply being outside, exposed. He tried cooking. Suni had always managed the kitchen, her movements fluid and confident. His own attempts felt awkward, inefficient. He bought vegetables at the small market nearby, unfamiliar greens, vibrant chilies, fragrant herbs, but translating them into a palatable meal was another challenge. He followed a simple recipe for gaengjued, clear soup. Pym had sent him. It was edible, barely. The delicate balance of flavours Suni achieved effortlessly eluded him. It tasted bland, lonely. He ate it standing by the counter, the effort somehow magnifying his solitude rather than alleviating it. Yet he persisted. The doctor's words, the memory of the dizziness, pushed him. The walks became slightly longer, his route expanding to include a small shaded park nearby. He started noticing things beyond his own feet. The intricate spirit house adorned with fresh flowers outside a shop, the rhythmic clatter of a vendor preparing some papaya salad, the surprising resilience of ferns growing in cracked pavement. He found a small open-air cafe tucked away on a side street, run by a quiet woman who served strong, sweet Thai coffee. He started going there each morning after his walk, sitting at the same corner table, the ritual offering a small, predictable anchor in his day. He exchanged nods with the owner, then tentative smiles. One morning at the market near his soi, while hesitantly selecting some mangoes, a voice beside him said, "Those look good, but these ones are sweeter today." He turned. A woman, perhaps a few years younger than him, with kind eyes crinkled at the corners and a warm smile, gestured towards another pile of fruit. She wore a simple fasin, sarong skirt, and an apron, her hands deftly sorting herbs at a small stall laden with colourful traditional snacks, neat squares of Kanamchan golden thong. "I am Mali," she offered, her voice gentle. "I have my stall here every morning." Ananda, caught off guard, managed a polite nod. "Ananda, I live nearby." "Ah, the new gentleman in the corner apartment," she said, her smile widening slightly, betraying a neighbourly awareness he hadn't expected. "Try these mangoes. Perfect with sticky rice." He bought two, feeling clumsy under her observant gaze. The interaction was brief, unremarkable, yet it lingered. Her easy warmth was a stark contrast to his own tightly held reserve. It was the first unsolicited kindness from a stranger since he'd arrived, a tiny crack in the wall of his isolation. He started seeing Mali most mornings during his market runs. Their exchanges remained brief initially, a shared comment on the weather, a question about a particular vegetable. Ananda maintained his polite distance, but Mali's quiet persistence was disarming. She never pushed, never pried, but her presence was a steady, warm counterpoint to the cool reserve he projected. She'd offer him a small taste of a snack she'd made, explaining the ingredients with quiet pride. Just coconut milk, rice flour, a little sugar, she'd say, offering a piece of kanom crock warm from the griddle. He found himself lingering longer near her stall, listening to her easy banter with other customers, observing the casual intimacy of the neighborhood market. One morning, finding him examining a bunch of unfamiliar herbs, she explained patiently how to use them in a soup, her instructions practical and clear. He bought them, and that evening attempted the soup she described. It was surprisingly flavorful, a small success that brought a flicker of satisfaction. He even found himself wanting to tell someone, a feeling so unfamiliar it startled him. The next day he mentioned it to Mali. The soup was good, he admitted, the compliment feeling foreign on his tongue. Her smile was genuine. "Ah, good. Cooking takes practice, like anything." She wiped her hands on her apron. "Sometimes I make extra curry paste. If you like, I can save some for you next time." He hesitated, the offer breaching his carefully constructed solitude. But the memory of the flavorful soup, the simple warmth in her eyes, made him nod. "Thank you, Kun Mali. That would be kind." A few days later, she presented him with a small container of fragrant red curry paste. "Not too spicy," she assured him. He began incorporating these small interactions into his routine. His walks extended to Wat Chet Yacht, the temple he'd failed to reach before. He wandered the peaceful grounds, admiring the 7 spires, the intricate stucco reliefs depicting celestial beings. He found a quiet bench under a large bodhi tree and simply sat, observing the gentle rhythm of monks sweeping leaves, the quiet reverence of visitors lighting incense. He didn't feel transcendent peace, but a measure of calm settled over him, a respite from the internal static. He even tried the seniors' Tai Chi class held in Suan Buak Had, the public park within the old city walls. Pim had sent him a link. He stood at the back, feeling stiff and awkward amongst the group of mostly women moving with slow, fluid grace. Their coordinated movements, the shared focus, created a sense of quiet community he observed with detached longing. He left after 20 minutes the first time, overwhelmed. But the following week, he went back, staying a little longer, trying to follow the instructor's gentle guidance. He wasn't joining in, not really, but he was present. Small steps, infinitesimally small, yet steps nonetheless. Progress wasn't linear. There were days when the weight of grief felt suffocating, when the effort of maintaining his small routines seemed pointless. A particular song on the radio, the scent of rain on dry earth, a glimpse of an elderly couple walking hand in hand, anything could trigger a wave of memory that left him adrift again, huddled in his apartment, the curtains drawn against the indifferent sunshine. On such days, the carefully constructed scaffolding of his new life felt impossibly fragile. He'd skip his walk, ignore the healthy ingredients waiting in the refrigerator, let Pim's calls go unanswered. The silence would roar back, mocking his tentative efforts. Loneliness wasn't just an absence of company, it was an active presence, a cold shadow clinging to him. During one such dip, Mali noticed his absence from the market for 2 consecutive mornings. On the 3rd day, as he forced himself out for coffee, she saw him approaching her stall. Instead of her usual cheerful greeting, her expression was one of quiet concern. "Everything all right, Kunananda? We missed you at the market." He mumbled something non-committal about not feeling well. She didn't press, but simply nodded. "Sometimes the quiet days are the hardest," she said softly, her gaze direct but kind. "Here." She pushed a small bag towards him. Some mud, sticky rice steamed in banana leaves. Easy to eat. He accepted the offering, touched by her quiet understanding, her ability to see past his polite facade without making him feel exposed. That small gesture, that acknowledgement of the struggle, helped pull him back from the edge. He started a simple gratitude practice, as suggested in an article Pim had sent him. Each evening, before sleep, he'd consciously recall one small positive thing from the day, the intricate pattern on a temple tile, the refreshing coolness of a young coconut, the taste of Mali's curry paste, the sound of his grandchild's laughter over the phone. It felt artificial at first, a forced positivity, but gradually it began to subtly shift his focus, training his mind to notice the small pockets of light amidst the shadows. He also began, tentatively, to engage more with technology. Pym had bought him a simple smartphone when he moved, but he'd barely used it beyond calls. He struggled with the small screen, the confusing icons. Mali, seeing his frustration one day as he tried to show her a picture Pym had sent, patiently walked him through the basics of sending messages and using the Line app. It opened a small window. He started exchanging occasional messages with Pym, sharing a photo of a flower he saw on his walk, or a dish he'd cooked. He even managed a video call with his grandchildren, their pixelated faces beaming at him, their high-pitched voices filling his quiet apartment with unfamiliar joy. It wasn't the same as holding them, but it was a connection, a thread pulled taut across the distance. His world was slowly expanding, inch by cautious inch. He found a small, second-hand bookstore near Thafai Gate, losing himself for an hour amongst the dusty shelves, the scent of old paper a comforting balm. He bought a book on northern Thai textiles, reigniting a flicker of his old librarian's curiosity. He started recognizing faces in his neighborhood, the noodle vendor who always gave him an extra lime wedge, the security guard at the bank who offered a respectful way. He began returning the greeting, the small gesture feeling less like an effort and more like a natural part of the daily rhythm. Mali invited him to join her for a simple lunch at a local eatery known for its khao soi, northern Thai noodle curry. He hesitated. Sharing a meal felt intimate, a step beyond their market chats, but he found himself agreeing. They sat at a small metal table, the air filled with the clatter of dishes and conversation. Mali ate with quiet enjoyment, talking easily about her grandchildren, her small garden, the upcoming temple fair at Wat Phra Singh. Ananda listened, offering brief comments, surprised to find himself relaxing, the shared meal creating a comfortable space between them. He learned she was also widowed, her husband having passed away several years prior. She spoke of him fondly, without the raw edge of grief that still defined Ananda's loss, but with a quiet acceptance he envied. "Life changes," she said simply, stirring her noodles. "We can't stop the river, only learn how to navigate the current." Her words resonated, echoing the Buddhist concept of anicca, impermanence, something he intellectually understood but struggled to embody. He even braved a community event Mali had mentioned, a neighborhood cleanup organized by the local temple committee. He felt awkward initially, unsure where to put himself amongst the cheerful, efficient volunteers. Mali found him hovering near the edge and handed him a broom. "Just sweep this area, Kunananda. Every little bit helps." He swept leaves alongside teenagers and elderly women, the shared simple task creating a temporary sense of belonging. He didn't make any deep connections, but he was part of something, however briefly. Afterwards, sharing cool drinks under a tamarind tree, he felt a quiet sense of accomplishment, a warmth that had nothing to do with the midday sun. His relationship with Pym also found a slightly easier footing. He started sharing small details from his days, mentioning the Tai Chi class, the book he was reading, the tasty curry Mali had helped him make. Pym's relief was palpable. Their conversations became less about her checking up on him and more about genuine sharing, though the deeper layers of his grief remained largely unspoken. He was building a life, brick by painstaking brick. It wasn't the life he'd planned, not the one he'd shared with Suni, but it was starting to feel like his. The anniversary arrived like a shadow stretching long in the late afternoon sun. 1 year. A full cycle of seasons lived without Suni's hand in his, without her laughter echoing in the rooms. The carefully constructed routines, the small connections, the nascent sense of peace, they all seemed to crumble under the weight of that specific date. Grief, which had become a dull ache, sharpened into an acute, piercing pain. He woke that morning with a sense of dread clinging to him like the monsoon humidity. He stayed in bed long after the sun rose, the light filtering through the curtains feeling like an intrusion. He ignored the insistent buzz of his phone. Pym, undoubtedly. He couldn't face her forced cheerfulness, her well-meaning sympathy. He couldn't face Mali's gentle understanding either. Today, solitude wasn't freedom. It was a gaping wound. Memories washed over him, relentless and vivid. Suni arranging flowers in their Bangkok home, her hand fluttering over his as they watched television, the devastating finality of her last breath in the sterile hospital room. The apartment felt suffocatingly empty, the silence amplifying his despair. He felt the strong, undeniable pull to retreat completely, to surrender to the inertia that had been his default state for so long. Stay in bed, draw the curtains tighter, let the day pass, unacknowledged, unlived. Why fight it? What was the point of the walks, the awkward Tai Chi, the forced gratitude? Suni was gone. Nothing could change that fundamental, shattering truth. He lay there, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly, uselessly, in the still air. The doctor's words surfaced. Manage stress. Mali's quiet wisdom echoed. Learn how to navigate the current. His own small victories flickered like dying embers. The taste of the soup, the grandchild's smile on the screen, the shared moments sweeping leaves at the temple. It was a battle waged entirely within the confines of his own mind, his own heart. Despair versus the fragile shoots of resilience he had so painstakingly cultivated. Give in or choose. The phone buzzed again. This time he knew instinctively it was Mali. Perhaps just a simple morning greeting via line, a picture of a flower from her garden. He stared at the dark screen. Ignoring it felt like severing the thin thread connecting him to the present, to the possibility of navigating this current. Closing his eyes, he took a deep, ragged breath. Then another. He didn't feel strong. He didn't feel hopeful. But he made the choice. Slowly, deliberately, he reached for the phone. He didn't reply immediately, but he didn't let it remain unanswered. He swung his legs out of bed, the simple movement feeling like a monumental effort. He walked to the window and pulled back the curtains, letting the bright, unforgiving sunlight flood the room. He wouldn't go for a walk today, not yet. But he wouldn't hide either. He would sit with the pain, acknowledge its depth but refuse to let it drown him. He would make coffee. He would reply to Malay later. He would call Pim back. He would survive this day, not by enduring passively, but by choosing actively to remain present in his own life, however fractured it felt. Months slipped by, marked by the changing rhythms of the Chiang Mai seasons. The heavy rains of the monsoon gave way to the cooler, clearer air of the north's brief winter, then softened again into the building heat of the dry season. Ananda's life found its own quiet rhythm, less rigid than his initial attempts at routine, more fluid and responsive. The anniversary hadn't miraculously healed him, but surviving it, choosing presence over retreat, had marked a subtle but significant shift. He still missed Suni with an ache that would likely never fully disappear, but the grief no longer consumed him. It was integrated, a part of the landscape of his life, like the ancient mountains ringing the city, always present but no longer blocking the entire view. His mornings now held a comfortable pattern. The walk often extending into the grounds of Wat Umong, the forest temple with its unique tunnels, where the quiet and shade offered a peaceful start to the day. Sometimes he'd practice the Tai Chi movements he'd slowly learned, his body still feeling a little stiff, but no longer entirely alien to the flowing forms. He enjoyed the silent camaraderie of the group, the shared breath in the cool morning air. Coffee at his usual cafe, where the owner now greeted him by name and knew his order. Then, perhaps a visit to the market, not just for necessities, but for the simple pleasure of observing the vibrant scene, exchanging greetings with Mali, perhaps picking up some fresh fruit or flowers for his apartment. His apartment no longer felt sterile. A few healthy plants thrived on the balcony, including the small chili plant he tended with surprising diligence. Books were stacked neatly but accessibly, evidence of renewed interest. A colourful textile he'd bought at the night bazaar hung on one wall. Small photos of his grandchildren were tucked into the frame of Suni's picture on the shrine. It felt lived in, shaped by his presence. His friendship with Mali had deepened into an easy companionship. They shared lunch occasionally, visited temples together during festivals, or simply sat and talked near her stall, watching the world go by. There was no romance, just the quiet comfort of mutual understanding and shared experience. She was his connection to the local community, his gentle guide, his friend. He learned to navigate the Grab app, giving him more independence to explore further afield. He visited the Chiang Mai National Museum, indulging his librarian's soul. He even took a basic Thai cooking class for seniors, surprising himself by enjoying the process and the shared laughter over failed attempts at intricate vegetable carving. Current part characters, 2770. Total characters, 25 and 333. His relationship with Pim settled into a comfortable honesty. He no longer felt the need to pretend everything was perfect, and she learned to offer support without trying to fix him. Their video calls were warmer, filled with genuine interest in each other's lives. He shared anecdotes about Malé, about his cooking attempts, about the funny stray cat that sometimes visited his balcony. Pim listened, her relief evident, sharing stories about the children's latest antics. The guilt that had shadowed their interactions eased, replaced by a simpler, more accepting love. He understood her busy life. She understood his need for quiet independence, punctuated by connection. He learned to manage his health proactively. Regular checkups showed his blood pressure was stable. He ate well, simple but nutritious meals he mostly cooked himself, finding a quiet satisfaction in nourishing his body. He prioritized rest but avoided slipping back into inertia. He accepted his physical limitations. He couldn't walk as far or as fast as he used to, but focused on what he could do. He embraced solitude, not as isolation, but as space. Space to read, to think, to observe, to simply be. He found pleasure in small, quiet moments. The taste of ripe papaya, the intricate weave of a bamboo basket, the sound of evening chanting drifting from a distant temple, the changing light on the Doi Suthep mountain range visible from certain vantage points in the city. He was still Ananda, the quiet librarian, the grieving widower. But he was also Ananda, the resident of Chiang Mai, the friend of Malé, the engaged grandfather, the man who was learning, day by day, to navigate the currents of his solitary life with resilience and a quiet, earned peace. He hadn't found ecstatic happiness, but he had found contentment, a sense of sabai, of being fundamentally okay within himself, within his life as it was now. One late afternoon, the air softening as the fierce heat of the day began to subside, Ananda stood on his balcony. The sky was painted in strokes of orange and purple over the silhouette of Doi Suthep. Below, the soy was coming alive with evening activity, food vendors setting up, neighbours returning from work, children's laughter echoing briefly. He carefully watered the chili plant, noting the new buds forming amidst the glossy green leaves. A small ginger-striped cat, the soy's resident opportunist, sauntered onto his balcony ledge, blinked slowly at him, then settled down for a wash, completely unconcerned. Ananda watched it, a small smile touching his lips. He thought of Suni, a familiar pang of missing her sharp but brief, like a quickly inhaled breath. The memory wasn't obliterating anymore. It was a quiet presence, woven into the fabric of his present. He looked out at the unfolding evening, the familiar sounds and smells no longer alienating, but part of the texture of his life here. He wasn't just enduring, he was living. He heard Malé calling a greeting to someone down below, her voice warm and familiar. He raised a hand in a silent wave, knowing she wouldn't see, but the gesture felt natural. He wasn't lonely, not in the crushing way he had been. He was alone, yes, but his life felt connected, grounded. He had found his rhythm in this northern city, a quiet cadence of walks and talks, of reading and reflection, of small joys and accepted sorrows. He picked a ripe red chili from his plant, admiring its vibrant colour against his palm. He would cook tonight. Perhaps a simple stir-fry using the fresh basil Malé had given him. He turned from the railing, leaving the cat to its grooming and the sunset to its slow fade. Inside, his apartment felt calm, welcoming. He moved towards the small kitchen, his steps deliberate, steady. He was home. He rinsed the basil leaves, their peppery fragrance rising to meet him. He chopped garlic with practiced ease, the rhythmic tap of the knife on the cutting board a familiar sound now, no longer awkward or forced. He thought about the Tai Chi group, the slow, deliberate movements that mirrored the pace he was learning to embrace in his own life. He thought about Pim's last call, her laughter as she described her son's disastrous attempt at making pancakes. He thought about Malé's quiet wisdom, her simple acceptance of life's ebb and flow. These connections, these small moments of engagement, were the threads that now held his life together, weaving a pattern of quiet resilience. The fear hadn't vanished entirely, worries about future health, about deeper loneliness returning, but it no longer paralyzed him. He had learned, slowly, painstakingly, that he possessed the tools to navigate those currents. He had learned the importance of reaching out, however tentatively. He had learned the value of routine, not as a rigid cage, but as a supportive structure. He had learned to find meaning not in grand gestures, but in the humble fabric of daily life, a shared smile, a well-cooked meal, a moment of quiet observation, the persistent green of a chili plant thriving on a city balcony. As the garlic sizzled in the hot wok, filling the small apartment with its pungent aroma, Ananda felt a sense of peace settle over him, as warm and comforting as the Chiang Mai evening air. It wasn't the boisterous happiness of his life with Suni, but a different kind of contentment, quieter, more internal, hard-won, and entirely his own.